Most beginner woodworking projects do not fail because people lack creativity. They fail because people get overwhelmed. Bad measurements, confusing tutorials, missing steps, wasted wood. Projects that look simple online suddenly become frustrating halfway through the build. And honestly, that is exactly why so many beginners never finish their first woodworking project. They start excited, then quickly realize woodworking has a lot more moving parts than expected. That is where woodworking plans can completely change the experience. And today, I want to talk about one of the most talked about woodworking resources online, Ted's Woodworking Plans. Because whether people love it, criticize it, or are simply curious about it, one thing is obvious: a massive number of beginner woodworkers keep searching for it. So in this video, I want to explain what Ted's Woodworking Plans actually are, why beginners use them, how they help simplify woodworking, and whether they are genuinely useful if you are trying to learn woodworking without wasting time and materials. And if you want to check out the plans yourself while watching, I linked Ted's Woodworking Plans below so you can look through everything firsthand. Now, the biggest thing people notice immediately is the number of projects included. Ted's Woodworking is known for having thousands of woodworking plans covering almost every category imaginable: furniture projects, storage builds, outdoor projects, garden projects, sheds, cabinets, workshop projects, beginner woodworking builds, and even projects people build to sell for extra income. For beginners, that variety actually matters more than people think, because one of the hardest parts of learning woodworking is figuring out what to build first. Most beginners either start with projects that are way too complicated, or they get stuck endlessly watching tutorials without ever actually building anything. That happens constantly. People consume woodworking videos for months, but never gain real confidence because they never start. And honestly, confidence only comes from building, not researching forever. That is one of the biggest benefits woodworking plans provide. Structure. Instead of trying to figure out dimensions, materials, spacing, and measurements completely on your own, you follow a proven layout that already organizes the process for you. That reduces a huge amount of beginner stress. And stress is one of the biggest reasons people quit woodworking early. Not lack of talent, overwhelm. That is the real issue. One thing beginners often underestimate is how mentally exhausting woodworking becomes when every single decision depends on you. Measurements, material amounts, assembly order, tool setup, joinery choices, spacing calculations. That adds up quickly, especially when you are still learning basic woodworking skills. Plans simplify those decisions. And when beginners remove uncertainty, projects suddenly feel much more achievable. Another huge beginner problem is wasted material. This is one of the fastest ways people get discouraged. You buy lumber, make one bad cut, then suddenly the board is unusable. That mistake feels expensive immediately, especially now with wood prices constantly fluctuating. Ted's Woodworking Plans help reduce those problems by giving detailed measurements, layouts, and material lists before you start cutting. That preparation matters, because woodworking mistakes usually happen before assembly even begins. Poor planning creates most beginner frustration. Now, one thing I think is important to say honestly is this: no woodworking system is perfect. And people should not expect Ted's Woodworking to magically turn them into expert furniture builders overnight. That is not realistic. Woodworking still requires patience, practice, trial and error, learning through mistakes. The plans simply reduce avoidable frustration, so beginners can focus more on learning the craft instead of constantly recovering from preventable problems. And honestly, that is extremely valuable early on, especially for people who feel intimidated by woodworking. One thing I noticed looking through woodworking communities online is that many beginners struggle with incomplete tutorials. A YouTube video might show the finished project, but skip important measurements, or skip material lists, or rush through critical steps. That leaves beginners confused. Plans solve that issue because the information is already organized beforehand. You are not trying to pause videos constantly while guessing dimensions. That smoother workflow makes a huge difference when you are still learning. Another thing I actually like about woodworking plans in general is they encourage beginners to complete projects. And completing projects matters far more than people realize. Your first successful project changes everything mentally. A simple shelf, a planter box, a workbench, a storage bench. The moment you finish something useful with your own hands, woodworking suddenly feels real. You stop thinking, maybe I can learn this someday, and start realizing, I can actually do this. That confidence is incredibly important because most beginners quit before reaching that point. One thing Ted's Woodworking does well is giving beginners lots of project options at different difficulty levels. That progression matters. Simple projects teach core skills: measuring, cutting, assembly, sanding, finishing, tool control, clamping, material handling. Every project builds experience that transfers into future builds automatically. And honestly, woodworking becomes much easier once those basic skills start stacking together. Now, another thing worth mentioning is tools. A lot of beginners believe woodworking requires a massive, expensive workshop before they can build anything worthwhile. That is simply not true. Many beginner projects can be completed with very basic tools: a circular saw, a drill, a sander, a measuring tape, a few clamps. That alone can take you surprisingly far. Plans help beginners understand what tools are actually necessary for specific projects, instead of randomly buying equipment they may not even need yet. That saves money too. And for beginners, reducing wasted spending matters a lot. Another huge beginner frustration is feeling like projects take forever. This usually happens because people constantly stop midway through builds, trying to figure out what comes next. That uncertainty slows everything down. Plans create smoother workflow. You already know the next step. The measurements already exist. The material list already exists. That organization saves enormous time and mental energy. And honestly, reducing frustration keeps woodworking enjoyable. Because woodworking should feel rewarding. Not stressful, not overwhelming, not impossible. One thing beginners really need to understand is this: every experienced woodworker started as a beginner making mistakes, every single one. Bad cuts, crooked shelves, uneven finishes, wasted lumber, misaligned joints. That is part of learning. The difference is successful woodworkers kept building anyway, and structure helps people stay motivated long enough to improve. That is where woodworking plans become extremely useful, not because they eliminate mistakes completely, but because they reduce confusion enough that beginners actually keep progressing. Another thing I think people appreciate about Ted's Woodworking is convenience. Instead of searching through dozens of websites trying to piece projects together, everything is organized in one place. That simplicity matters more than people realize, especially for beginners already dealing with information overload online. Now, of course, having thousands of projects can feel overwhelming too, so the smartest approach is starting small. Choose one beginner project, finish it completely, learn from it, then gradually move toward more advanced builds later. That progression creates confidence much faster than trying to jump into giant, complicated furniture projects immediately. And honestly, woodworking becomes far more enjoyable once you stop chasing perfection and start focusing on progress. Because your projects do not need to be flawless to be valuable. That shelf you built slightly uneven, still useful. That bench with small imperfections, still something you created yourself. That matters. There is something incredibly satisfying about building something real with your own hands. Something functional, something useful, something that did not exist before you built it. That feeling is why so many people fall in love with woodworking once they finally get past the beginner frustration stage. So if you are somebody who wants woodworking to feel less confusing and more approachable, structured plans can genuinely help simplify the process. And if you want step-by-step woodworking projects, layouts, measurements, and beginner-friendly plans designed to reduce mistakes and make building easier, check out Ted's Woodworking Plans in the description below. It can be a very helpful starting point for beginners trying to build with more confidence and less frustration. And most importantly, just start building.